Unleash the power of purpose with impactful business voices, hosted by Baki and Anita Larsen. Each week, you'll be inspired by stories from companies that are making a real difference in the world, and you'll learn practical tips on how to grow your business with an impact.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us once again, another Tuesday, our Impactful Business Voices podcast. And as always, we have amazing guests that are making an impact either in the world, in their communities, on the clients they serve, the lives they touch. And that's why we launched this podcast, to feature them and give them a platform to share the amazing things they do and hopefully inspire you guys to go make your own impact. So I'm your host, Anita Larsen.
And I'm Baki. And today we are thrilled to have a special guest with us, Dr. Nathan Estrada. Special man, VP of Clinical for Nymbl Science. Nymbl is one of the world's most engaged digital fall risk reduction program worldwide. Today, we're going to be discussing with him really the science behind the fall risk reduction, how Nymbl's fun and effective program is actually empowering older adults to live their best lives. And really, their mission is to prevent 1 million falls. It is such an interesting mission. Nathan, let's bring him on. Let's bring him up. Nathan, welcome. Welcome.
We're so excited to have you here. I mean, we spent a lot of time together and getting to know more about what Nymbl does. And I think Nancy and I are both super excited to share that with everybody else. We learned so much about your mission and your passion for helping older adults. And we want to talk about fall prevention and go into that. But before we do, why don't you share with our listeners and viewers a little more about what Nymbl Science does? What do you do? How do you help older adults?
Yeah, so Nymbl Science has really started on this key concept that 1 in 3 older adults fall, but what we've created for them to do something about it, only 1 in 800 do. So when you have this huge mismatch between the problem and people willing to engage the solution, you got to go, well, why? Right? Why do people not want the solution? And so we did a lot of research to find out, dang it, older adults just don't like going to balance classes. In fact, most older adults don't want to leave their home. So about 9 out of 10, if you offer them something in the community, they go, oh, not for me. So we had to go, how do we create something that is fun, effective, and in someone's home that still improves balance and decreases fall risk? And so ultimately, we really looked at a lot of the science behind balance training. And as a physical therapist, we had to go, how do I create my magic without me being there? How do I get over my own ego as a therapist and my need to be needed? And really empower older adults to be their own solution. And so we found that older adults, they want to play a game. So we gave them that. And if they're playing a cognitive game while they're moving with simple functional movements, we retrain balance as a reflex. And next time when you stumble and fall, that reflex is available. So instead of falling, you catch yourself. And then we surround that with this broader thing of how do we motivate people? And then we first had to come to the conclusion that older adults don't need motivation. They're perfectly motivated. Everyone wants to age perfectly, right? No one thinks, man, I really hope I age average, right? And so it's not a matter of motivation. It's a matter of intention. So we had to create a whole kind of cognitive behavioral training program designed for older adults that would illuminate them to all the different things that they're empowered to do on their own. You combine that with balance training, and then you really get the magic of Nymbl to decrease fall risk.
Love it. Love it. It's so exciting. Every time I talk about Nymbl, it gets so exciting. The healthcare system is absolutely, I guess I'll use the one word, maybe ridiculous. Challenging, yes. Can you discuss a little bit some of the key challenges and also the misaligned incentives in the current healthcare system when it comes to fall prevention and the older adult health itself as well?
Yeah, it's a big issue, right? Because providers really like to get paid, and so do hospitals. And so when you look at the key driver of revenue of a hospital, like it or not, it's taking care of sick people. And so, the hospital systems, we talk a lot about prevention, but we want to prevent people from being injured inside the hospital. But if they get injured in their home, I don't mind taking a $10,000 or a $30,000 hospitalization to take care of someone, because that's my revenue cycle. And so that's why we don't see a lot of preventative care or preventive services really scaled from a hospital system, because it's bad for business. The second aspect of it is providers love to be needed. As a physical therapist, it's kind of an ego stroke, when someone has a problem and I go in there and I fix them, right? And I have all the knowledge and my hands heal them from their things. And then you take a step back and go, actually, my 20-minute interaction with them is far less impactful than the rest of the 23 hours and 40 minutes that they're spending without me. And so it's actually more about what they do than what I do that matters. And so those are kind of those misaligned incentives. And in fact, we dealt with that really acutely when we first started Nymbl. We thought, of course, every hospital has a fall prevention program. They would love to have Nymbl, until the actuaries did the assessment and go, you guys are really good at this. And at this rate, we're going to miss out on millions in surgical revenue. I can't be a customer for something that risks my revenue. So that was a tough reality. And our healthcare system's designed to provide care. And the more care they provide, the more they get paid. So we had to do it. We had to pivot, and we went to those who were paying for the fall. So we went to the insurance carriers, and the insurance carriers, when they started doing the assessment, go, wow, we're paying $15,000 per year for these people that are falling. We got to do something about it. But we had to educate them on how to even find the people that were falling.
That's so interesting and very sad.
Very.
Yeah.
And I know it's worse in certain places than others as well. Sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
No, you're right. But you get what you pay for. So if your system pays for digging holes, your country is going to be full of holes, right? If your system pays for covering the holes, well, then you're not going to have any. And so right now we have a healthcare system that's designed to dig holes, to do work, not to avoid work. And so that's the hard challenge that we have.
There's so many biases out there in the healthcare society right now. How can we address ageism and age-related biases that are out there?
Yeah, it's actually Older Americans Month, right? And one of the key things, I actually posted about this on LinkedIn a few days ago. One of the greatest biases we have for older adults is this bias that because I believe they won't do something, I won't offer them the solution. You go 5 years ago, and I would talk to a chief medical officer of an insurance plan, and you say, hey, we're going to do this app-based balance program. And they go, my aunt doesn't use apps. And I say, well, congratulations. You have an opportunity to remember your aunt, but 88% of older adults have a smart device and they use it daily. But that wasn't their experience. And we tend to remember the people that had the most questions. And the people that had the most questions are the people that were least tech-enabled in healthcare. So those really stuck in our mind. And so we stopped offering digital solutions, and then we wondered why people didn't do them. So that was the first bias. I think the second bias is that an older adult can't do something on their own. Right? I mean, how ludicrous is it? The greatest generation, they survived World War II and they did all these great things, but we think, you know what? If I don't help them, they're not going to do anything today. We couldn't be farther from the truth. Older adults are beautifully motivated, and they can do all the actions to manage their own healthcare. In other words, they're consumers of healthcare. They're not recipients of it. And so ultimately, those are the kind of bias that we're going. And then I think the third bias is we just have a bias against aging somehow being a normal decline. Right? That aging is less. And we also talk about older adults as if they're other people. I am an older adult in training. I want to build the world that I want to age into. Right? And so I want to create the programs that I'm going to enjoy when I'm 70. And I don't want to create a program that I wouldn't do. And so those are the kind of biases. We ask older adults to do ludicrous things because it's good for you. Right? And we paternalize it, and we treat older adults like children, when in reality, we should be partnering with all of our whole community to go, how do we do this together? And how do we empower you with the tools to be successful, regardless of my skill? And that's really the bias that I'm working against in healthcare, is removing the provider as the only purveyor of health.
It's so true what you said. I mean, at some point we're all going to be those older adults. There's no way around it. That's where we're heading, and that's where we should be heading. And it's but I think people still view, like, they don't want to think about it, They don't want to view ahead or think ahead necessarily to what's going to happen in those days. And I think that's where a lot of those biases come in. And it's just like you said, I mean, they've done it all, they lived it all. Why? Who's to say that they can't do what they set their mind to now?
Yeah.
Why do we make it less? Yeah.
Yeah, and the vast majority of aging is behavioral. We kind of assume, well, my mom had bad knees and her mom had bad knees. No, you had bad behaviors. Very rarely does your health decline directly correlate with your parents' genetics. Most of it is the behaviors of how well you've taken care of yourself.
Yeah.
And if we just realized that, we wouldn't be victims of our genetics, we'd be champions of our behaviors. And so that's how you win aging, if you want to know. But that's how you win life, right? When you're a champion of your behaviors, you have far better outcomes. And there's no difference in aging or health or any other aspect of your life. I look at it this way: is my grandfather was legally blind, but he still repaired his roof, right? Because he could. And as a physical therapist, I'm terrified every time I got in the ladder. But then I had to remember, man, that's his risk to take, and he was living his best life. And sometimes we protect people, but we actually protect them by having them live smaller. Smaller's never cured anything in anyone's world.
Nathan, I just want to say, I had a 95-year-old tenant a few years ago, and he begged me. He goes, Nancy, please, I want to do the snow and I want to do the grass. I'm like, but you're 95. He goes, that is why I'm still living.
That's right.
So it's so, I just wanted to add that because it's so important. A lot of them don't realize because they're also not taught as well, or they weren't brought up that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of those biases of, I always like to blame pension plans for the marketing campaign that retirement was about resting. That retirement was about doing less than sitting in the Barca lounge or the lazy boy, right? I mean, even how we named things was based on the intended use, which is doing less. You've earned the right to do nothing. And what a disservice that is. Because retirement should be an expansion of value. It should be a redetermination of, you know what, I had this job and that was my value. What do I want my next value to be for society? And when you stay engaged, man, that's a vibrant experience. I've had more joy every decade of my life. And there's no reason to think that my joy is going to diminish in my next decade. I know with great expectancy that my best years are ahead of me because my best impact is ahead of me.
And I would say also because the older you get, the less you care what other people think. I think that's one of the biggest joys of aging.
Well, you can start prioritizing things that matter, right?
Exactly,
and it's
yes.
about relationships. It's about mobility, right? It's about where do I want to deploy my skills? I'm a physical therapist. I don't see patients right now. And the reason why I don't see patients is because I can help 8 people a day, or I can prevent 1 million falls. Hey, let's go do 1 million.
So segue from that. So talk to us a little bit about how Nymbl's digital approach works and how it's different from traditional fall prevention methods. And I know something you talked about with us in the past is the cognitive versus the physical. So maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So one of the things that makes physical therapy so great at improving balance is you have some really distracting person like myself who never shuts up, distracting you and making you do a brain challenge while you're doing balance challenges in the gym. But then you go home with this piece of paper, and that piece of paper lacks all the cognitive challenge. So what we found in therapy is that physical therapy, when you're in it, increases balance wonderfully. And then you get home and it almost had no impact. It didn't stay. Mm-hmm. And so it took us a long time in therapy to realize, you know what, it's actually the cognitive. And it makes a lot of sense because the first 2 stages of balance recovery are actually cognitive. So let's talk about that a little bit. You think that you fell and then you had a reflex, or you moved, you stepped, you did something. No, what happened is your body had to sense yourself falling. That was an alarm system in your brain had to tell your cerebellum, the little cauliflower in the back where your reflexes live, that you were losing your balance. And then that little cauliflower in the back of your brain had to then go, hey, this is the response. That's a cognitive challenge. And only then did your muscles get activated. Mm-hmm. And so because it's a brain challenge before it's a physical challenge, we have to train it like that. And what the brain really loves to do is it loves to think about movement. Well, man, if you're thinking about your balance, you have terrible balance. Just like you ever played tennis and think about hitting the ball, you suck, right? Yeah. And so you have to have these reflexive movements. And so here's what we found. If you give someone a cognitive challenge, and that cognitive challenge is enjoyable and distracting, and you tell them to move at the same time, well, then that little cerebellum on the back of your brain controls the movement reflexively while you're playing the game. So the next time you stumble, that cerebellum goes, I know exactly what to do. I know how this feels like. I know how to do this. And even while you're distracted carrying your laundry up the stairs, you step, you recover, and you no longer fall. And so we actually decreased fall-related medical injuries by 35% that way. And so that's kind of the magic of the brain and body together. But there's a really big benefit to that. Who doesn't like to play games? You get the added benefit of people enjoy it. Just because you're older doesn't mean you lose your funny bone, right? You want to still enjoy the things you're doing, and which things shouldn't be drudgery. I think the second really secret sauce that we had is, you know what? Smart devices are smart. And right. And so smart, they can make good decisions. So we can assess people on a smart device. We can keep them safe with the movement sensors, and we can create personalized programs that used to take clinical decision making. I used to have to watch someone and go, I think they're ready for this. Now we can measure them and give them the right program. And you can't do that in a balance class. You just do the same thing for everybody. And you go to a balance class and there's some super ager across the room, and you know, I'm at a different point of physical ability, and none of us are getting our needs met.
And I think another super important element to that is what you mentioned earlier. Now you're empowering older adults to take control of their own health, and your program helps facilitate that, right?
And where they want it handled. 9 out of 10 older adults want it to be provided in the home. So every time we think an older adult needs to go to the gym, if they don't want that, then we get nothing. So let's give it to them where they want to be. So when you look at we call it a gap in care. 8% are willing to go to the gym. Only 1.7 go enough to have a benefit, if you want to know. Wow. And about 8% of a population are in physical therapy. 85% are doing relatively nothing. What if we gave them something to do, right? That seems like a really big gap in care. Let's fill that. Now, we still need clinicians, and I still want the gym. But let's not ignore the 85% in the middle anymore.
That's a very high amount. Very high amount. This is the number in the U.S.?
It's actually internationally, if you want to know. And, you know, when I say 9 out of 10 older adults, 9 out of 10 humans, right? I mean, if I looked we polled 100 people that were listening to this and said, how many of you are excited to leave your home to go to a balance class or a yoga class, whatever you want to call that experience in the community, 9 out of 10 would go, sounds really good for someone else to do. I'm actually going to do something at home today. And it's just the human spirit. You know, we created a system to support people, and we put it in a location that most people don't want to go.
Do you find that in the home? Yeah, no. Do you find that it got worse after the pandemic as well?
It did, but for different reasons, right? The pandemic is really challenging for overall mobility. So what we saw is an acceleration of decline. So for every day you don't move, it takes 4 days of strength training to regain the strength you lost. We actually learned that from NASA studies on bed rest. So, and it's really problematic for hospitals. So if you get hospitalized and they don't let you out of bed, for every day you're in bed, it takes 4 days of rehab to recover from the hospital-induced atrophy.
Wow.
So that's how fast the body gets rid of muscle mass. And so imagine a whole generation or decades of older adults who their greatest mobility was walking 10 laps around the coffee table one way and 10 laps around the other way. That was not enough mobility to sustain strength, to sustain confidence, to sustain your overall kind of mobility and strength. And so what we found is that we accelerated muscle atrophy by not letting people move for their protection. We probably stole years of their life from them. Because saving them from getting an infection, but leaving them so weak that they couldn't live the life they wanted to live is a tough trade.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, coming back to your app, you know, how are you measuring outcomes and the success with the program? And what kind of impact have you seen so far?
Yeah. So the joy of digital health is you can measure everything. And you do. You know, so let's talk about what we used to measure. In a balance class, we measured whether someone attended it. Hercules, congratulations. I don't even know what that means, right? Like I can go to the grocery store and not buy anything. It doesn't mean that I actually fed my family. And so ultimately, you know, attendance is not the goal, but we measure everything, but we measure it at 4 key areas. The first thing that I measure is people changing risk factors from their own behaviors. So I look at, did you have a meaningful conversation with your doctor for the first time about your fall risk? That unlocks a lot of great conversations about your medications and other different things. Did you get your vision checked? Because vision's a third of your balance. Did you get your medications reconciled? Do your providers know all the medications you're on? Which, by the way, half of all medication reconciliations when I did home health were wrong. That the doctor did not know what the patients actually had in the home. Okay.
Wow.
So those are those broader behaviors. And so I measure those because I'm encouraging people to have these great kind of self-advocacy of going, these are the things within your control. You can't control what your doctor talks to you about, but you can tell your doctor, these are the things that I want to talk about today. Right. And so it really empowering them. So that's the first level, it's the behaviors. And then we look at confidence and, do you feel more steady walking? Do you feel like your balance is improving? And do you feel like you're no longer going to lose your balance in your own home? I then look at physical. So I'm able to test people pre and post on like a 30-second sit to stand. And so I can look at how their body is physically changing. And does that correlate with their confidence? Did you know that fear of falling is the second greatest predictor of future falls? And so if you remove someone's fear, you empower them. And that makes a lot of sense. When people aren't fearful, they actually move more. They live a better life. In fact, fear of falling is more predictive of loss of independence than actual falling. That's crazy. And so we can have a future talk on that. And then what we do is we look at all those things and go, okay, are we changing their behaviors? Are we changing their beliefs? And are we changing their ability? And then I take it one step further. Are we changing their quality of life? And so we look at physical health on, are you doing more moderate level activity in your life? Moderate level activity, doing more stairs, vacuuming again. And 38% of Nymbl users say, I'm actually doing more than when I met you now. Like you've unlocked my mobility again, and I'm living a greater life. And then a third are more calm and peaceful and have more mental energy. Man, isn't that amazing? So improving balance actually has a mental health impact. 1 in 5 are more socially engaged. That's important. And so
they feel more empowered.
They feel more empowered,
independent,
and fearful that if they leave their home, they're going to fall.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So you're doing a lot already, and I love these results. And we know you're going to hit your 1 million fall prevention mark sooner, hopefully, rather than later. But looking to the future, what excites you the most about the potential for like innovation and progress in your field or in just overall adult health and fall prevention? Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah, there's a few different things. Number one, I'm really excited that we're getting past those days where people go, older adults don't do tech. Nymbl just launched the country of New Zealand, and Nymbl is a top 5 app at the country level on health and wellness store.
Congratulations!
Wow.
Older adults are actually driving, the success rate there. But here's my long-term vision. In 5 years from now, when an older adult thinks of aging well, I want them to think of Nymbl, which means that we got to be far more than balance. Because balance, while it's the foundation of mobility, there's other things that stop older adults from living their best life. And I'm going to give you what the next ones are. When an older adult has great balance, but they don't have a bathroom nearby, and you have urinary urgency, which we've all felt, right? That urge of going, if I don't get somewhere quick, I might have an accident. That is far more common in older adults for a slew of reasons. And it's actually 46% prevalent in all Nymbl users. So even regardless of how great their balance is, 46% say, actually, urinary urgency still holds me back. So we're solving that. And I'm actually launching a program that takes all these clinical best practices that sometimes remain kind of secretly locked in physical therapy and women's health. And we're just going to give them out broadly to all of our users so that they can start practicing the things that will decrease the burden of those symptoms and empower them to be more confident to leave their house. So that they're not limited. Here's the next thing. What if I'm scared about my bone health? There's so much that we can do to increase bone mineral density and decrease your confidence and actually stimulate bone growth as we age. There's some diet, there's exercise, there's medications. We should be doing it all to protect your bones. After that, this postmenopausal thing's real, right? And, we accept it's like, well, nothing you can do about it. There's a lot of things that you can do to make your life better postmenopausal. So we're really taking a women's health initiative as well. I just hired a full-time women's health specialist PT to work alongside me to provide these things. And then here's kind of my last thing is, all of us have that one thing that kind of holds us back, and it's a functional thing usually. So you'll meet someone, they go, I feel great until I see a curb. Or, I do great until I see that step without a handrail. Or I can't walk on gravel. we have to start creating functional programs that attack individual level impairments functionally, that no longer allow someone to go, I'm not going to do that because of A. I'm not going to do that because of B, because A and B can be solved. So we're really going to look at a broader functional. So when you solve balance and mobility, and someone isn't scared they're going to have an accident, and they're not scared of a curb, wow, does that unlock a lot of value generation where people can go, well, what do I want to do with that? And then we don't stay at home. We start expanding our world again.
And that equals a longer life.
Yeah.
A longer life and where you want to be. I mean, sometimes I don't like the term aging in place. I think it's mildly derogatory because it infers a stagnation. Like you look at someone else. I want you to age in place to solve my problems because you're cheaper. I want people to thrive where they want to be. And thriving has a connotation that I have dignity in the choice. I have dignity in what I want to do and how I deploy myself. A great example of that is one of my patients. He was really frustrated and lonely in senior living. And he goes, I just like to help people and fix things, but I can't here because they do everything for me. If something breaks, someone comes in and fixes it. I go, why don't you advocate for yourself? He went to the management of the building, said, can I fix everything here? If something has a lamp broken, can I fix it? And they created a workshop for him. And he lived his best life. And people would the whole neighborhood, they'd have appliances break and they'd bring it to him. And he found so much joy in bringing that back to life because he got to see that impact someone else. That is living life. And whatever that is for you, let's unlock that. And let's not be a barrier to that success. Let's not remove that value. Let's empower you to return to it.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. I mean, Nathan, you have gone through such an incredible journey with Nymbl. If you can say one or two things, what has surprised you the most throughout your journey with them?
I think one of the things that surprised me the most is, number one, is how many talented, passionate people there are out there that we could build a team from. I've just been so pleased. Nymbl started off with 3 of us, and now there's 33 of us. And so in that growth, one of the things that we've been able to bias towards is I will take someone who is a moderate performer, but a passionate advocate for older adults, because I know we're always going to win with that.
Absolutely.
We're always going to win with that. And so I think that's one thing that shocked me is that how many like-minded people there are, because they don't really have a voice, because there's not enough voices talking and advocating for older adults and aging. Yeah. The second thing that really shocked me was, man, I'm such a passion person that I think that passion drives business. Man, business models drive business, right? And so what is the business case? And there's not a business case for fall prevention in a hospital outside of the hospital doors. And there's actually not a huge business case for fall prevention in senior living, because I was making people live there too long, right? And it was such a funny dynamic. They had new people that wanted to pay higher rent, wanting to move in. And so it took me a long time. It took me way too long to realize that all these passionate people couldn't purchase my product. And I had to go to someone who was financially motivated to stop falls. And so that leap surprised me at how slow I was to realize it.
The most important, Nathan, is that you realized it, and now it's starting to change the world. So that's awesome.
So can you kind of leave us with some advice for whether it's individuals or organizations that want to share your passion and share your impact? They're looking to make a positive impact on older adult health, fall prevention, in any of these areas. Any advice?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that we can do as professionals that are growing companies is understand that we actually have to attack the bias before we can solve the problem. Right? I spent years reminding people that older adults were capable of using tech. I spent years reminding people that anyone can improve their balance. It's never too late to start, and most falls are preventable. Because we buy into the lie because someone's common that it's normal. There's nothing normal about falling. There's nothing normal about it. And so I think that's my advice is really you have to position yourself into a knowledgeable stance to where you can refute the bias in a human and loving way with people and hold their hand with you so that you can solve together. Because the reality of it is, as long as that bias exists, people won't solve the problem. And so I think that's my encouragement is you have the ability to actually change the belief that empowers the impact. And you can't empower the impact if someone believes it's not possible.
Yeah. Great point. Great advice.
Yeah, this is Nathan. Every time we speak to you, it is always an incredible conversation. Thank you really for joining us today. It's been so valuable, and it's such an important it's such an important aspect for even the younger, the 40s, the 50s, to introduce to their parents. I mean, I remember talking about it to my parents, and they're like, oh my God, which insurance company has that, right? Thank you. It's been an incredible call today. Thank you for joining us. What we're going to do is we're going to put you backstage for a few minutes. We'll come back and join you in a minute. So don't leave, please.
Not a problem. Thanks, guys, and have a
Thank
blessed day.
you. So this was an amazing conversation. Like you said, as always, every time we talk to Nathan, we learn something new and inspiring.
Absolutely. My God, there was so many takeaways that I was writing down. So they must listen. I remember the first time that I met Nathan. I went out to the grocery store that day or the next day, and I saw these elderly people, and they were about to fall. I'm like, oh my God, don't fall. And I was like, I wish they had that app, because then they wouldn't have that struggle of going down that one step. We have them everywhere, right? Listen, it's a huge market. Let's talk about our takeaways.
Yeah.
One of the first ones that I loved is that, certain things that happen, they're not inheritance. He was talking about, certain falls or things like that. If you take care of yourself, you're going to prevent yourself from falling, right? It's just about the education of how to, right?
Yeah, I wrote that the same exact point, the behaviors versus your genetic. Don't think that you're aging based on how your family, your parents, your grandparents aged. It's in your behaviors and how you lived your life. I think also one thing that kept coming up as we were having the conversation is, you keep thinking of your grandparents. Like, that's what I had in my head the whole time. Because I remember my grandma had a really bad fall when she was always like super kind of big. Nobody could keep up with her. And, I'm from a cold country with lots of ice, just like you, Nancy. And she fell on the ice and she hurt herself really badly. And after that, she would rarely go outside because it scared her. And that is very sad. And to have something like this that will help you enhance the quality of life. And I think one thing Nathan said is that you're more inhibited from the fear of falling almost than the fall itself. And especially if you already experienced a fall and now you're fearful and you're inhibiting yourself. I think that's very powerful, and it really takes away from the quality of life as you're aging.
And it's the time where they're supposed to go and have fun. They just finished working 30, 40, 50 years. Like, Nymbl is there to really help them live a better rest of their life, right? Because retirement, as Nathan said, it's all about the expansion of living, right? But then if they fall at 50 or 55, then what happens? They lose the rest, right? So no, I love that. Also, I like the stat that he brought where 85% of the older adults are doing nothing to really take care of their balance. That is higher than I really thought.
Yeah.
I mean, we as humans can only go and take care of one person at a time. Nymbl can go and, I mean, who does not have insurance today? Most people have insurance, right? So no, I definitely see with his 1 million falls, I definitely see that 85% definitely lowering. Yeah.
And I think my final note that I kind of want to leave on is the empowerment and just giving the power back to that generation. We're all going to be there. I don't know, why are we taken away from this, this immense life that they have lived and all the experience they have? Why do we think that they can do less now because they're in a different generation? Give them their power back and empower them to be in control and take charge of their health and do what they want to do.
Absolutely. You know what, Anita? Another one that really surprised me, and I really did not know it. He was talking about every one day that you don't move, you need 4 days to actually, like in rehab, to be able to, gain back your muscle mass. 4 days. That
Yeah,
means like,
you're in the hospital. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, in the hospital, but can you think of, when they're at home as well, and they're just literally sitting in bed all day,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the same kind of idea. Um, So yeah, no, this is a really, really great podcast. Looking forward to for the world to hear more about Nymbl and growing more with Nymbl and helping these elderly not fall as much as they are. So this has
Yeah.
been really wonderful. Guys, make sure that you keep in touch with Anita and myself to learn really, what else that we have going with different opportunities for, different additional information that we have to bring to you and to learn from us. So please don't miss any future episodes. You'll be able to find a copy of this recording as well on our YouTube channel at Impactful Business Voices. And please support us, guys. Click on the subscribe link so that you'll be able to get a notification every single week, and you'll be notified on who our next impactful business we will be speaking to.
And a reminder, next Tuesday is the last Tuesday of the month. So that's our monthly business lounge episode. So it's just Nancy and I. And we will be discussing what everybody's discussing these days. We're going to talk AI, ChatGPT, the good, the bad. If you have any questions that you specifically would like to ask us, well, of course, join us live, or feel free to even send us an email in advance at info@impactfulbusinessvoices.com, or reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we can try to cover your question during the episode. But yeah, don't miss next episode, Tuesday at 11 a.m.
Until next
Eastern.
week. Yeah. Yes, 11 Eastern. Sorry, Anita. Until next week, guys, go make an impact. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Impactful Business Voices. Subscribe now and don't miss an episode.